Dumelang Mzansi, Sanbonani, Tobela. Welcome to the Health Club, your new weekly guide to understanding your health, your benefits, and the systems that support your well-being. This show is proudly brought to you by GEMS, the Government Employees Medical Scheme, and we're here to make healthcare simpler, smarter, and more empowering for you at home. Now, where better to start than with something that touches millions of lives? Medical aid. How much do you know about your medical aid? Do you know what you are covered for? Do you know the difference between medical aid and medical insurance? And how do you get the most value from what you are paying every month? Yonke le mibuzo izophendulwa namhlanje la ku Health Club. We'll unpack the basics, clear up the confusion, and give you real tools to help you make informed decisions for yourself and your family. Because when it comes to your health, knowledge is not just about power, it is about protection. This is the Health Club. Let's get started. So sometimes people go to see a doctor who's not in the network. What are the consequences for that?
The network providers may or may not charge scheme rates.
Why is it important then to have medical aid?
Losing your health is an event that is not predictable.
In an emergency, always go to your nearest healthcare facility. I mean, it is an emergency.
So, we've all heard the terms medical aid, medical insurance, benefits, exclusions, you name it. But how many of us really understand what we're paying for? Now, before we get too technical, let us test the waters a bit. We hit the streets to ask people if they really know what they are covered for. Do they even know the difference between medical aid and medical insurance? Here's what the public had to say.
Well, I would have thought the two were the same, to be honest with you. That medical aid is for when you have medical problems and you need to pay for your hospital fees, basically. Medical insurance, isn't it the same thing?
So my understanding is that when it comes to medical aid, is to cover your expenses in terms of your medical expenses, and then when it comes to health insurance, it would be for a specific maybe illness or a specific treatment that you might need. So it doesn't cover everything as opposed to medical aid.
I believe that medical insurance is more for emergencies, and medical aid covers like your doctor's visits, your medication, and things like that.
At the moment, I don't have medical aid. I had it when I was under my mom, which was 3 years ago. And once I got of age, I was told to get my own, but I haven't seen the need to do so because I've never used it ever since.
Yes, I do have a medical aid. The benefits that I have is that I have free access to medication at the pharmacy when I get ill. It's easy for me to go to the doctor for consultations or anything. If I want to go to the dentist, maybe for teeth removal or teeth whitening, it's easy for me to do that because the medical aid covers it all. So those are the mostly benefits that I use the most.
Into eyenza singabi medical aid ukuthi afford asikwazi ukuthi sikhokhe medical aid.
I'm not a person who usually gets sick, so at some point I'm like, what's the use for a medical aid?
Oh yeah, sure, yes. I have been in those instances, and it hasn't been too bad, honestly.
Sometimes I would get sick, but then I wouldn't go to the doctor because now I have to like pay, and then that uncertainty of what amount would I have to pay, whereas when I had a medical aid, I wouldn't care so much about the cost. I would say maybe evaluate your situation. If you're someone with your chronic illnesses and whatnot, I would advise you to join because you would need that medical aid from time to time. But then if you don't get really sick because of the hike in prices and whatnot, I wouldn't advise to join because medical aids nowadays are really expensive.
Look, if you're not going to look after your body and you're earning a really big salary and you're living a stressful life, then it's probably very useful.
Welcome back. Before the break, we could see that there's not a lot of knowledge about the difference between medical aid and medical insurance. Kodwa ungakhathazeki, we've got you covered. Joining us now to unpack the basics is someone who plays a key role in reviewing and approving the benefits and contributions for medical schemes across South Africa. Mondi Kovuzela is a senior manager at the Council for Medical Schemes and joins us now in studio. Mondi, thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure, Clement. I'm happy to be here.
So let's start with exactly what we heard from the Voxes there, members of the public, when we are asking about the difference between medical aid and medical insurance. What is the difference?
Yeah, it is not surprising that there is a confusion on the difference between medical schemes and health insurance. It is especially true for young people who've just started jobs. Health insurance is normally cheaper and it's preferred. But most importantly, the difference is the benefits that are provided by these two groups of benefits, if you call them that way, or products. For medical schemes, they provide comprehensive cover. But when you look at the health insurance product, they provide limited cover. So they don't provide as extensive cover as you get in the medical scheme environment.
So if I have medical aid, why do I need medical insurance?
When you have medical aid, you do not need health insurance. What we see typically happening is that people choose, especially young and healthy people, they will choose health insurance because it's cheaper. But it means when the time comes to claim, you might find yourself out of pocket because you then have to pay more out of your pocket to cover for the claims.
So for abantu abasibukele ekhaya who are thinking, all right, what's the best thing to go here? As a young person, I'm trying to go for something cheaper, but I also don't want to find myself in a situation where I'm not covered fully should I be in an emergency. Why is it important then to have medical aid? And please explain also about those prescribed minimum benefits.
Yes, I think, Clement, the important thing here is financial protection. Losing your health is an event that is not predictable. Young people, normally they drive, and we know that you get motor vehicle accidents that will require you to be in the hospital for quite a long time. That can be very expensive. So that's why it's important that you have a medical aid. Because an emergency like a motor vehicle accident is a PMB. Let's talk about PMBs. Prescribed minimum benefits are a set of health services that all medical schemes are required to provide. It's by law, Medical Schemes Act. What is also important is that it does not matter which option you belong to. For any option that you will buy that is regulated under the Medical Schemes Act, they will all have PMBs. So there's protection for everyone. The purpose really of our PMBs is to ensure that members are not discriminated against, because in the absence of PMBs, medical schemes could decide to say anyone with a cardiac heart failure will not cover them. That's a PMB. Anyone who has hypertension will not cover them. So PMBs provide that protection.
What if it's a chronic illness that's not listed in the prescribed minimum benefit?
So what is good about medical schemes is that then they come in different tiers. The lowest tier, which we can call the hospital plan, will contain PMBs, will contain CDLs. It means your hospital care will be covered. It means your medicines will be covered. There might be formularies or designated service providers. But now when you've got additional conditions, they might not, if they're not PMBs, they might not be covered under your plan. You might find that you need to buy a higher plan, a more comprehensive plan that provides what we call discretionary benefits. But then those benefits must be registered with the CMS so that we're able to protect you, because once they are registered with us as an office, we're then able to enforce them and ensure that medical schemes will pay you if you have one of those conditions.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thanks, Mondi. In fact, understanding the basics is the first step. But here's the thing. Even if you know what your medical aid covers, how you use it matters just as much. One of the easiest ways to save money and avoid surprise bills is by using your medical scheme's network providers, the doctors, hospitals, and pharmacies approved by the scheme. To help us understand why that matters, take a look at this.
My name is Dr. Moresh Mahlangu, and I am a qualified medical doctor, a GP. I have about 20 years experience in the medical area and many years experience in your medical aid, managed healthcare sphere. Currently now working as a healthcare consultant. So I always encourage members, please check what preventative healthcare benefits are available to you through your medical aid scheme and take advantage of them, because that can greatly ensure your health and it prevents any complications further down the line. I always encourage people, take advantage of your network, because that will therefore minimize your out-of-pocket payments or your co-payments that you have. So for example, if you use a network surgeon, if you're in hospital, or a GP, you then know that whatever they bill will be billed as per the contract that they have with your medical aid, and you won't have to pay them extra. In an emergency, always go to your nearest healthcare facility. I mean, it is an emergency. And what they will do is they can stabilize you at that hospital, ensure that you are stable to be transported to your network hospital. That's depending on your clinical condition. Going to a non-network hospital has penalties. You'll have a co-payment. Depending on the medical aid, it can be up to 15,000 Rand that they will not cover and that you will have to cover. So depending on your clinical condition, the medical aid will then sit there and say, all right, this condition is a serious emergency. They had no choice. They could not be stabilized. The medical aids can consider whether or not the co-payment stays. So for me, it's always about read. Read your scheme rules. Look for something called your scheme rules. That's actually far more detailed than the brochures that the medical aids issue you. You can find those on the websites. Read your brochures, go into the website and look for information. Always check, because you'll find that sometimes things will change during the year. There's always new product updates every year. Be on top of it to see what else is offered. You'll find that a new benefit will be there. So read. That is the most important thing. And you pay so much money every month, yet people do not seem to get the most out of what it is that they pay for.
So it's clear that using your scheme's network providers is not about convenience. It's actually about protecting your benefits and your wallet. And Mondi, I want us to stay with that point. What are some of the risks or costs that members face when they don't use network providers?
Let's start here, Clement. You must remember that PMBs, or prescribed minimum benefits, must be paid in full. So if medical schemes do not contract with providers in the form of a network or designated service providers, it means they face an unlimited claim from providers. But by putting together these provider networks, they're able to negotiate the rates that they will pay for each of the conditions that are on PMBs. This is good for members because it means that cover remains affordable. But now, if members decide that they want to go outside of the network, the schemes are entitled then to charge them what we call a co-payment. A co-payment really is a disincentive on members not to go out of networks, because then they render the networks not useful for the purposes that they were designed for. But it's also important to indicate here that if you do not have a reasonable access to a DSP, the Act or the rules of the medical scheme should allow you to access benefits anyway if you are not able to reasonably access a DSP of your scheme.
And just lastly, what do you think are some of the mistakes, the biggest mistakes that members make when engaging with their schemes? What do they need to be aware of?
So there are a number of ways that member can find to understand their benefits, and definitely approaching your scheme to get the rules, getting the brochures, or also approaching the CMS. On our website, we have a long list of PMB schemes that will assist members to understand their benefits entitlements.
Mondi, thank you so much. This is so informative.
Thank you, Clement. It was a pleasure to be here.
Now, when it comes to your health, every detail counts. After the break, we speak to Dr. Vuyo Gola from GEMS to unpack What happens if you're not the principal member? She's going to help us understand how your coverage works as a beneficiary and what to do when life circumstances change. Stay with us. The Health Club continues in a moment. Welcome back to the Health Club. Before the break, we unpacked the basics of medical aid and how to use network providers to stretch your cover. But what happens if you're not the main member on a scheme? What rights do beneficiaries have? What happens if the principal member passes away? And how can you move from being a beneficiary to becoming a principal yourself? To help us understand these important questions, I'm joined by Dr. Vuyo Gola, who is the Chief Operations Officer at GEMS. Dr. Gola, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Clement.
So let's start with something that's been confusing to a lot of us, to a lot of our viewers as well. When you sign up for medical aid, what are some of the things to look out for that will help you make the best choice?
So I would say there's a few things that one should really consider. Are you looking for full medical aid cover, or are you looking for a hospital plan? So the difference is that a hospital plan will basically cover the costs when one is hospitalized. So all the costs associated with that admission will be covered. Whereas a medical aid covers comprehensive benefits for both in and out of hospital. So, for example, out of hospital would be consultation with your GP, going to the pharmacy, and things like that. So that's the first thing. Consider what you're looking for. The second thing is consider the health needs of your family. So it's very important for all of us to choose a medical plan that is suitable for our pockets, right? But what's also important is don't just look at that, also look at what your healthcare needs are. So I know, there's a lot of medical jargon in the benefit brochures, but it's very important to actually read and find out if the option you're choosing actually covers your family's needs and your own needs. And the last thing to consider is whether there is a joiner penalty or a waiting period. A waiting period is something that is applied by most medical schemes. So there's a general waiting period of 3 months when you join a medical scheme. If you have a pre-existing condition, the waiting period can be up to 12 months. So you need to find out these things before you actually sign up for a medical scheme, and also the specific options within that medical scheme.
Okay, so what is the difference in cover between a principal member and a beneficiary?
There's no difference in cover. So a main member or principal member is the person that is actually responsible for paying the contributions on a monthly basis. They are the one that is registered as the principal member or the main member. The beneficiaries are then children, spouses, then you've got medical schemes like GEMS that extend cover to extended family like grandparents, nieces, nephews, etc. So the only difference really is who is registered and who's paying the contributions. As far as the actual benefit offering is concerned, there is no difference. So the scope of the benefit offering is the same for the principal member and beneficiaries.
Yeah, so sometimes kukhona izinto ezenzakalako mhlambe umuntu obekayi principal member uyashona. What happens then to the beneficiaries that are linked to that principal member?
What typically happens is that the medical aid is not going to cut you off immediately. What you need to do, if you are the spouse, for example, contact the medical aid, because you can actually transfer the main membership or the principal membership to your name, so that then you can continue with the cover.
Do you need to be a government employee for you to be able to make that transfer and for it to be smooth?
No, you don't. So if the primary or the principal member was a government employee and they've passed away, you can continue with your GEMS membership because you were beneficiaries before. You just have to transfer. So GEMS will not cut off your benefits, and they will not cut off your membership. You can continue. Obviously, there has to be someone that takes over the main membership.
Let's talk about network providers now, the doctors, because sometimes people go to see a doctor who's not in the network. What are the consequences for that?
So I'm going to start, if you don't mind, by explaining what a network doctor is or a network healthcare practitioner is. So medical schemes will contract with various healthcare professionals. And the reason for that is that there's an agreement with regards to the contracted rate that the medical aid will pay that practitioner or doctor for the consultation and the services that they provide to you. There's other terms and conditions that are part of the contractual agreement. Now, the reason why medical schemes do that is that this is a form of protection for members. Because as you can imagine, there is a contractual agreement. When that doctor or practitioner sees you, they will charge the medical scheme based on the contracted rates. Now, if one tends to go outside of network providers, the network providers may or may not charge scheme rates. A lot of the time, you will experience out-of-pocket expenses because the doctor can charge over and above what the contracted doctor is allowed to bill. So it's important to understand, if you go on the website, if you go on the GEMS website, if you go to the website of any medical scheme, there will be a list of the contracted doctors there, which we call network doctors or sometimes DSPs or designated service providers.
And how broad are those, and how, geographically speaking, do you have a network of those doctors across the country?
Absolutely. GEMS members are across the country, so GEMS members do have a network doctor within a 10-kilometer radius of where they live.
Dr. Kwala, thank you so much.
Thank you.
As we've just had, understanding your statement, knowing your rights, and using the right channels when things do not make sense, these are the everyday steps that protect your benefits and your peace of mind. Before we close though, here's a quick look at what is happening inside the world of GEMS, from new tools to member services you might not even know exist. Take a look.
In this edition of GEMS News, we offer tips on understanding your medical aid and making the most of your benefits. Understanding your medical aid benefits is key to maximizing their value and using them wisely. This can help you avoid unnecessary out-of-pocket payments. Co-payments occur when the cost of a healthcare service exceeds what your medical aid covers, and you're responsible for paying the difference. To avoid co-payments, make sure you use the GEMS network providers. Get referrals from your nominated GP before seeing a specialist if you are on the GEMS network option, such as Tanzanite 1 and Emerald Value option. If you have a chronic condition, you can register for the Chronic Medicine Management (CMM) program if eligible. Choosing generic medication over original brands, scheduling regular health screenings, and managing your day-to-day benefits throughout the year can help to avoid running out of cover early. For more information, visit the GEMS website or get in touch with us through our social media channels.
That brings us to the end of this episode of the Health Club. Today we learned that knowledge is power, and in the world of medical aid, it's also protection. Ask questions, use your network providers, and know what your scheme offers. It could make all the difference. Until next time, stay informed, stay covered, and take charge of your health. Siyabonga, re a leboga. See you next time on the Health Club.